Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit ActiveDay.com to apply.
Now, Positively Ernie with Ernie Anastos, a New York TV legend and radio host with great positive stories and interviews.
Thanks, Ernie. You're the best.
And now, here's Ernie.
All right, welcome back to the show, and I'm having a great time as always. I got a special guest for you. What a face. You're going to recognize him immediately. He's a terrific guy, a dear friend. Please let's say hi to John Tesh. John, you look good, my man. How are you?
As we say at our age, I'm above ground. I think I may have a couple of years on you, but I've been really looking forward to talking to you because I remember you for most of my career in New York as the competition.
Yeah,
so we were always trying to bring you down, and it never worked out.
No, John, listen, you were at WCBS Channel 2 in New York. I was at WABC Channel 7 in New York, and you were one of the youngest reporters. I think you were 22 years old when you were on the air, which is fabulous.
Yeah, I couldn't. Fortunately, I had some nice people who took care of me. So in that newsroom at the time, where Linda Ellerby, Meredith Vieira was in there, John Stossel, of course, I just talked to you the other day.
Sure.
Jim Jensen, Roland Smith, and Chris Borgand, who was the ex-New York City detective, was the guy who looked after me because I was a little kid. Yeah.
You know, I also had a chance to work with them as well, and what a great team. You know, when you think about the memories that we have, I mean, it was a great start in many ways, but you have had an illustrious career. I mean, John, people know you're a pianist, you're a composer, radio host, intelligence for your life, and you've done so many concerts. I'm so proud of you, and I have a lot to talk about. So let's just talk about, you know, your inspiration. I know that Yanni, a Greek friend, Yasu, you and Yanni were together, and he kind of gave you a break in many ways, and then you went on to this amazing career. Talk about your love of music and how it started when you were very young, very young.
Sure. Yeah. I grew up not far from where you are, and actually I grew up listening to WABC. Cousin Brucey, and all the gang. I was born in 1952.
Garden City.
Garden City. Yeah. Yeah, and Garden City was one of those places where you don't know this until you actually get out of where you grow up. When I got out and went to North Carolina State, I realized that back on Long Island, those schools were incredible, you know, and I realized based on some of the training that I'd actually been in a performing arts school, you know, and there was just a lot of music, a lot of theater, and so I was a really skinny. I'm 6'6", and
big guy.
I weigh 230 now. And so back in the day, I was this height in junior high school, and I weighed 155.
Wow.
So I was always available on Sadie Hawkins' dance day. There's nobody really interested in me. So like a lot of kids back then, maybe like you too, we had we had a finished basement, you know, and so your parents, you just get down there in the basement, and we had reel-to-reel tape recorder and Mr. Microphone and reel-to-reel tape and a little piano and stuff. And so I was there just, creating stuff, trying to get popular. Never really worked out, but those hours and hours that my mom babysat the piano eventually chased me down and said, you know, your real love is music. But those were the halcyon days of our youth. Yeah. Back then, you know, where I mean, when you and I were on television, how many millions of people were watching every night? Because there were only three. Well, maybe
exactly. There was no competition.
Yeah,
you know, John, you talked about your height, and I remember one time, you might recall this, you and I were in a car with Lester Holt. We were driving someplace, I can't remember the three of us, and you couldn't get in the back seat of that car. You were so tall, you were so big, and I said, come on, John, let's make room.
Yeah, but now I've got 3 grandkids, 12 and 10 and 7, and they made me take them to Disneyland out here in Los Angeles. And to your point, I could not get in Space Mountain. My knees, and they were like, "Papa, what's going on?" I said, I can't get in. So yeah, I'm mostly legs.
Well, John, you know what? Let me do the math here because I wrote down some numbers. Okay, 6 Emmys, 4 gold albums, 2 Grammy nominations. You talk about your early childhood and the experiences you had. I mean, what an illustrious career. You have hosted so many different programs. I mean, we talked about you raised $7 million for some of the concerts you did for PBS. I mean, that's an extraordinary career, my good friend. Not to mention the fact that you have done something extraordinary. When people hear your name, they say, "Round Ball Rock." And I said, yes, you wrote the theme for the NBA. And there's a great story about that. And we have the video that we're going to show that you actually tell us about. You made a phone call to yourself, and that's how it all started.
Yeah, I thought, when you're in the industry, right? So I went from WCBS to CBS Sports, the network sports, which was ridiculous because you know me well enough to know I probably back in the day I couldn't name 4 NBA teams or 2 NFL teams, but Terry O'Neill and Vanguard Sauter said, "Hey, listen, we're going to do a different approach to CBS Spectacular, and we want to be a little more serious. We want to go after Jim McKay and ABC, you guys, And so they hired me as a sideline reporter. Yeah. And then they had nobody to cover things like downhill skiing and the Tour de France bike race.
Yeah, you went to the Olympics and everything.
Yeah, so David Michaels, Al Michaels' brother, was a producer, and when we got to the Tour de France, he said, "Hey, I know you can play synthesizer. Why don't we bring a bunch of synths over here and we'll do this MTV style?" And that's really where I guess you would say the professional career started.
Sure.
But during that time, CBS lost the NBA coverage to NBC. And so Dick Ebersol and those guys, I learned through the grapevine that they were looking for a new theme for the NBA. And so they were just going to take submissions. And so in the middle of the night, I mean, you alluded to the story.
Yeah.
I had an idea in my head, and I realized I didn't have, I didn't have a piano in front of me. I didn't have a manuscript paper or no iPhones back then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so I called my answering machine in New York and left that message for myself. Yeah.
And you actually, did the song in your head, and then you played it back, and then you just wrote the song. I mean, that was it.
It was, sometimes it's so silly. I mean, it was really, I called myself, and I tell this story on stage when we're in concert.
Yeah.
And I just said, all right, here's an idea. And it cut me off, and I called back and I got back 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
And I put the answering machine on the piano.
Let's hear it.
Right? That's interesting. And then
that was it.
How it started. But I think the secret sauce was understanding the way Ebersol and Tommy Roy and those guys behave, or the way they make their decisions. When I recorded it and added a little bit of orchestra on there with my help from my friend Yanni, I didn't send him a cassette tape. I sent him a VHS tape. I had some footage that I had recorded on my Betamax.
Yeah.
And so I put the music to Michael Jordan and all of those players back in the day with Celtics versus Lakers, so they could see what it looked like on the video.
I mean, what history that is. When you think about so many accomplishments that you've had. You talked about sports, all the major events that you've covered, local news, and then music and performing PBS. I mean, how does it make you feel? I mean, because you're still a young guy, and how does it make you feel that you've accomplished all of this, and then think about perhaps what's next? We always ask that question. What's next for John Tesh?
Yeah, and by the way, those of you who may be joining this program for the first time, whatever, I'm talking to the guy who probably has a factor of 2 or 3 times the amount of Emmys that have been bestowed on me. I mean, I know you,
John.
Like I said, as the competition. I know you as a man who's been at the top of this game for
my friend,
for so long. And
yes.
when you get to a certain age, it really is okay. So what is important? And this is why I was so interested in talking to you, because what we talk about on our radio show all the time is positivity.
Yes.
And in 2015, I walked into a doctor's office, my GP, just for regular exam, and I walked out with 18 months to live.
Unbelievable.
what happened was I had a rare form of prostate cancer that didn't make any blood markers. So my PSA, for those folks who know what PSA is, was 0.4 for 5 years. So there was really no indication that there was anything going on. But then the physical exam revealed that all of a sudden I had 9 virulent tumors that had spread into my lymph nodes. And so my wife, Connie Seliger, I became a cancer patient, basically, Ernie. I talk about a lack of positivity. I started drinking. I was taking Vicodin because you can get anything you want when you're a terminal cancer patient. But my wife is a full-blooded Italian from Bronx.
You've been married 30 years, man, which is great. 30-year marriage.
Said,
yes, go ahead. What did she say?
This is not us. And so, she said, this is not us. And so she dragged me out of my pity party, and we got after it. We, found the right hospitals, the right, the right surgeons, and and all of that stuff. And then we combined, as you alluded to earlier, the dual modalities of medicine with the power of prayer.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Hose. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethose.com/terms.
You've done so much in many ways, and you also have written something, Secrets to Answered Prayers. And it's a course. And I want to hear about that because, here you've just told a very moving story. I mean, 18 months to live. And you went through that. People can't even imagine. You say, my God, what would I do if that happened to me? But here you are, a great survivor, and now you're trying to help others. What did you learn from all of this, and how do you want to help others, John?
Yeah, the interesting thing for me is that I grew up in the church on Long Island in Westbury Methodist Church, and I memorized the scriptures, and like a lot of kids, I got to college and it was like, okay, here we go, yeehaw, in the '60s. And it wasn't until I met my wife Connie 32 years ago, where she was basically in a small church, but it was like a Bible study. Yeah. And my faith became renewed. And so when I was on tour, back 10, 15 years ago, longer. I would try to share my faith on stage. And there's so much pushback. People just didn't. We didn't come to the concert for this. We don't need to hear the gospel here. I'll get that in church. But I'm convinced that God didn't put sickness on me. But when this happened, I became very honest about the process we were going through, and shared it on Facebook and on the radio, and began to share it on stage. And then Ernie, at the end of every concert, when I shared my testimony with photos of me going through chemo and the rest of that, and then the story of the power of prayer, people would come up to the stage afterwards, and you realize that everybody in some form or another is sick. There's people who actually had sickness, people who were grieving the loss of a child or a loved one. And so I began to get so many questions about, hey, John, what prayers did you use? What did you and Connie, what was the process?
Interesting.
That I started recording videos about it, and put together some handbooks with the prayers, because people, I think everybody just thinks that these days, if you believe in God or if you believe in the Word of God, then that's religion and it's just judgmental, and I don't want to be part of it. But the power, right, exactly, the power that's in the Word of God. And when you talk about visualization and positivity, that's all, you can see it all there in the Word of God. And what Proverbs 18:21 says, this really speaks to what your ministry is. Proverbs 18:21 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. And so we speak death over ourselves, and we can really speak when you combine faith with positivity,
yes,
you can really speak your future.
Absolutely. And, John, I love listening to you. Here you survived. You had a terminal illness, and your faith was really important. And, I like to talk about spirituality, but I don't think of it as religion. In fact, every time I have that conversation with somebody, I'm saying, look, this is reality. Okay, this is who we are. We're connecting the dots. We're recognizing, how we are all part of the same energy. And we can share these stories with people with love and respect and civility. And don't you think, John, we need that now more than ever?
Yeah, what happened was, it's interesting because you know this to be true as well. Yeah. One of the things we found on our, for example, on our Facebook page is that when we were in COVID and coming out of COVID, our audience is men and women 45 plus with a huge bump at 60 plus, right? Mm-hmm. Baby boomers, just like me.
Yeah.
And so what we found was there was so much loneliness. And so people were searching, and that's why so many people quit the great resignation, why so many people quit their jobs, trying to figure out doing the Etch-a-Sketch moment where let me just start over. Mm-hmm. And so when you think less of religion, right, which has been perverted by many different denominations.
Yes, unfortunately. Yeah.
And when you just think about what the power of, right. And what I love to do, and I do this all the time in the course as well, is you take what Duke University and Stanford and mm-hmm. Dana-Farber, the hospital in Boston,
sure.
what they say about the power of prayer, and you mix that with what the Bible says about the power of the prayer, and even what meditative prayer is.
Fabulous.
It's really powerful, and I've seen it in action even at the Olympic level with some of these athletes. What's the difference between an athlete that wins a gold medal and one that and one that's on the third position in the stand? And it really is. I saw this with Franz Klammer. Up close and personal. Before a race, he'd have his eyes closed, Ernie, and he'd just be going. He wouldn't be practicing on the slopes. He didn't need to do that, and he'd be going like this. And he'd be going through the whole course. He had the whole thing memorized, and he even had his position on the gold medal stand memorized as well. Wow. And so, like you said, the power of positivity, but the power of understanding that you need to be able to see the finish line as well as the finish line in your life. And once I could see that, I realized that I wasn't going to die at 18 months.
It's an incredible story. And what we're talking about here, John, is this higher level of consciousness. Okay? I mean, we are here, we're on this earth. I look at the globe every day. I have some pictures that were taken from NASA, and I'm looking at this earth, and I'm saying, I'm on this. I'm on this ball, I'm on this globe, and you can't even see me and billions of others. And I'm saying, this is so special. This is so unique. And you have to look into how this came about. And fundamentally, you just stop and you say, there's a source for everything. There's a creator, there's a designer for everything that you see. And I look at that, and the most important thing that comes out of it, in my opinion, I know you agree, is love. Love is the answer. Love is the most powerful thing, John. And if we love one another, if we show that respect for each other, it's a short time. It's a short time. There's an old line that says, don't worry, be happy. In 100 years, all new people. And it's our turn now. Here we are. And what are we doing with this time? And you're doing great things. You really are. And I just applaud you for being outspoken that way. And people have to just love, and they do, love and respect you for sharing that kind of message after what you have been through. And even if you didn't go through that, I think you had that gift in you already.
I didn't know until it was all I had, until my faith was all I had to hang on to. The other thing that you're talking about, too, is just to come under what you just said. I wanted to scream out, "Preach, Ernie, preach!" Is a mindset.
Mindset.
There's so many different studies now about how if you can instill in a child or a grandchild a growth mindset instead of a failure mindset, it changes everything. And so if your mindset is start with love. A lot of times, you'll be doing something in business, and my wife and I have this thing where somebody will say something or text something to you, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're like, you want to go, and it happens on Twitter all the time, right? And so we have a phrase that we share between us when something happens, if something starts to light either one of us up, we're like, let's assume goodness. Let's start there. And that's what you're saying.
Yes.
Let's assume goodness and start from there instead of reacting instead of reading that text or reading that email or even reading the voicemail in the tone of voice that in the mood that we're in at the time.
Yeah, no, it makes a huge difference in life. I can't tell you how excited I am talking with you, John. And I know people who are watching you, and a lot of people watch you for over 10 years on Entertainment Tonight with Lisa Gibbons. You guys were a great team. You must have enjoyed that, and that was part of the learning experience for you. You must have enjoyed that. A lot of people are going to remember you on Entertainment Tonight.
That was a very strange experience. I was doing at the time. I was working on the Tour de France bike race with David Michaels, and I came back home and I got my answering machine and I had a message from a guy named Frank Kelly from Paramount Television. He said, "Hey John, this is Frank Kelly. We're doing this new show called Entertainment Tonight, and I'd like to talk to you." And I'd been in Europe for so long, I had no idea what he was talking about, right? And so I called him up, and he said, "Well, Mary Hart's going to be in town. Would you do an audition with her?" And I said, "Okay, sure." So I show up. I had hair down to here because you're not on the air.
You did have long hair,
anthology sports. You're really not on the air that much. I've been working on the tour for 3 months. Here, my hair's down to here. I show up in cut off shorts, half a beard.
Yeah.
And I come in. Mary Hart's got her Mary Hart thing on. All her regalia, the Entertainment Tonight stuff. And so, and Mary and I still joke about this.
Mary's great.
And they go, "Okay, would you read the teleprompter, and then Mary's going to ask you a few questions." And so the teleprompter pops up, and it's the celebrity birthdays. And so I'm reading this now, not like you would read the news on WABC, but as I'm doing downhill skiing, right? And I'm like, "Celebrating your birthday today, Phil Collins is 62, And Mary's like, "Bah!" And so they calm me down a little bit, and then they offered me a 13-week contract to move out to Los Angeles from you, which was ridiculous, because you and I used to 3-5 year contracts.
Yeah.
And what they said, because they did their homework, they said, "Listen, come and do this. Let's try for 13 weeks, and we'll give you access to our recording studios on the Paramount lot."
Wow.
So, I
must have loved that.
I was in.
Yeah.
I wasn't great. I wasn't. They actually sent me, Ernie. You'll appreciate this because we've all had lots of different co-hosts, right?
Yes.
And so they called me into the office after the second contract, 26 weeks, and they go, "Hey John, we just did a focus group, and we realized that people think that you don't like Mary." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
What?
And they said, they pulled up a tape, and it was like, because I was always sort of an iconoclast on that show, or at least I was in the beginning, where it's like, Mary would go, "Oh my gosh, look at those guys, they look like they're friends, off stage as well." And I'd go, "Yeah, right." And then I would go on and do something else. Like I thought it was cute, But what I was doing was I was doing the Harry Reasoner thing to Barbara Walters.
Wow.
If everybody and nobody was happy, but. And I bring this up to Mary now. She's like, "I don't remember any of this." But anyway, so they said, "We're sending you to host school." I'm like,
"Really?"
I'm not doing that. And they go, "Well, you can't keep your job." So they sent me to Dallas with Lillian Glass was the name of this woman.
Wow.
You may have crossed paths with her. She's a body language expert, and she had all these tapes of me sort of rolling my eyes and turning my back on Mary and everything. She goes, "We're going to train this out of you because you don't want to be this."
Interesting.
Person. So 2 weeks of host school therapy.
Yeah.
And I came back and saved my job. But isn't it funny how I was in a different paradigm than what everybody else thought I was in. Have you ever had that experience where you are you too nice a guy to have fallen for that?
No, but you know what? I mean, I think that, you didn't realize, what was going on. But, sometimes a little direction like that is really important. I mean, we've all had, some consultants over the years. You remember the Maggot Group, and, they would always do a lot of consulting for television. And I remember one time sitting down with one of the experts, and we were, in New York, and he said to me, he said, it's very easy, for you to fall into a routine. You toss to the reporters, you end up tossing to the weather or the sports and so forth, and you become, unconscious competent. You can do it like driving a car and never have an accident because you are unconscious competent. So he said something to me that really stuck. He said, look, Ernie, he said, here's the secret. I want you to be conscious competent. I want you to be thinking about what you're doing. When you're tossing to a reporter in the scene, instead of saying, John Johnson is standing by with the story, you turn around and you look at the focus and you say, John, I noticed behind you, that this is going on. Tell me more about what's happening. So just being aware, being conscious, competent, with everything that you do, you're writing, you're tossing, whatever it happens to be. So, good advice like that. But look 10 years on that show, and Mary Hart is a sweetheart.
What do you think of podcasting, and do you have advice for podcasters if they're going to start one?
What's interesting about that, John? It's a great discussion because you mentioned at the very beginning of the interview there used to be only 3 networks. And we didn't have all that competition. Now we have a plethora of places where people can go and watch and listen. And they can also be their own stars. I've always encouraged, particularly young people, I've written 2 books for teenagers, The History of Teenagers in America and The Adventures of a TV Reporter. So I love youth, and I want to encourage them. So I say, look, if you're going to do a podcast, I think it's a good challenge for you. I'd like you to be able to have a good message. You don't necessarily have to use foul language. You don't have to do anything that really, becomes so outrageous. Just be you. Find the talent, find the message that you want to say, work with the people that you want to, and then make something good. I'm a little concerned about so much out there, John. I think you are the same way, that we just don't have any, remember standards and practices? Remember all of that? There used to be big departments at the networks, standards and practices, and we'd say, this is something that you do or you don't do. Those things have gone out the window. So I like to reel it back in and say, look, civility. You can be nice. You can still have strong comments and opinions, but you don't have to go that far over. So that would be my advice to people, or whether young or old, but doing a podcast, is just be sincere, be honest, and be civil about it.
Yeah. I didn't hear anything beyond when you said your book, Adventures of a TV Reporter. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I did a little children's book, The Adventures of a TV Reporter, Ernie and the Big News. I love it.
So I can read. I can read that to my grandkids.
You could. I'll send you a copy. I think you'll like it. You know what? We've distributed over 15,000 free copies in New York. I've gone out to a lot of elementary schools, and we've given free copies of this book. And it really encourages to dream big. And that's the message of it. And it's a reporter. It was my story. Started in the basement of his home and comes into New York and has these stories covering the parade and so forth. But it ends up with all positive stories. And to me, when I go out and talk to these young kids, they're in elementary school, and I talk to them and I say, what is it? What is your passion? What do you want to do? What do you like to do in your free time? Yeah. And then they start talking about whatever their love is. It could be even, goldfish. And I say, well, maybe you have a career in oceanography or something, maybe you want to be a vet, just to give them ways of thinking of how they can take their talent, their natural gift and their passion, and turn it into something that could be useful and worthwhile and make a contribution to make this a better world. That's the message.
Yeah, that's so great. There's a book that's called, I think it's called The Rule of 10 Years Old.
Oh.
And now that a lot of people are trying to find their purpose, and this is just exactly what you were just talking about, encouraging people. Now that people are trying to find a purpose in life or change what it is, or really just nail it down, the advice is look back at when you were 10 years old, and then think about what you were doing, what you're passionate about, when you were doing it, you lost track of time, and then find an uncle, not your parents, but an uncle or an elementary school teacher or your best friend at that time, call them up and say, what did you see me doing when I was 10 years old? And that's probably what you should be doing now if you want to come alive. And then the next step is to use it for purpose. Yeah.
John, I tell this story often. I'll make it real quick. We had a career day when I was in junior high, and when it was over, I talked to my homeroom teacher, Miss Ryan. I said, Miss Ryan, tell me something. How do you know what career to choose? She said, what do you like to do in your spare time? I said, I built a little radio station in my basement, and I play radio with my friends. She said, that was it. And she said to me, Ernest, whatever you enjoy doing will be the avenue to your success. Do what you really want to do, and you just have fun doing it. And that's the best advice you can. John, let me ask you this before we go. If you were to give advice to a newborn baby, something that they could hold on to and maybe look at it later on when they can understand it better, what advice would you give to a newborn child?
Figure out what it is that makes you come alive, and do that. Just what you said. Just what you said.
John,
and I think passion is a great word too. I believe passion is great, but I think even what you will get passion if you really have your why, if you really have a purpose.
You know, well, I've done so many interviews like you have, and I remember talking to someone, and this social scientist, probably out of Harvard, I had her on the air, and I said, so what is it that we think about in life? She said, you know, when it's all said and done at the very end, she said, you only think about one thing. I said, what's that? She said, who did you love and who loved you?
Oh.
How powerful is that?
Yeah.
So simple. So simple.
Really, really
not how many awards we've won, not all the different things that we've had the pleasure of enjoying, but who did you love and who loved you? That's simple, John.
It's even, and day by day, Ben Franklin was famous for saying, for when he woke up in the morning, he would say, he would ask himself, what good am I going to do today? And at the end of the day, he would write this, what good have I done today? I mean, it's pretty simple, right? And it does speak to love.
I love it. John, I got to tell you something. This was a joy. You and I could continue to talk for the next hour. I think people who have watched you over the years and know of your reputation, but people who are watching you today, I mean, are really admiring you and saying, hats off to you. God bless you, John, because you've told so many wonderful stories, especially your story of survival and how it's encouraged you to continue to go on and do good things to help other people. I mean, that's a terrific gift that you're passing on to everybody, John. Really is. I'm proud of you.
I appreciate it. And if folks want to get in touch with me, I always leave my email address right there on Tesh.com, my website.
Excellent. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you again. Keep up the great work, dear John, and our love to Connie and your family and your children. I mean, I hope you all have a wonderful time.
Yeah, thank you, and back to you as well. And I'm always from now on, you're going to be Ernest to me. Not Ernie.
That's what she called me, Ernest. Exactly. All right, John. Thank you so much. God bless. John Tesh.
You turned out to be Ernest. That's good.
Oh, you're a good man. Thank you, John Tesh. We love you. Okay. Wonderful show. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.